Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, we've had a few MPI debates over energy policy over recent weeks because, frankly, this has been a movable feast, to say the least. We had a matter of public importance debated in the last week of the Malcolm Turnbull's Prime Ministership, a time when he had just announced the third version of the National Energy Guarantee in just 7 days. It was a week, Mr Speaker, that featured surrender after abject surrender and retreat after cowardly retreat by Malcolm Turnbull in the face of an onslaught by the hard right, led by the usual suspects, the member for Warringah, who's not here for this debate, the member for Hughes, who's always in this debate, and the member for Hume, who has been rewarded for his treachery by being appointed the Minister for Energy. We warned the Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull at the time that he would not be rewarded for his abject, weak surrenders to the hard right agenda on energy policy. We warned him, and we were proven right. The member for Warringah, always grateful for a bit of weak surrender, said it was just a conversion of convenience that Malcolm Turnbull had undertaken, just a conversion of convenience. Of course, true to form, he didn't let up. And now we have the member for Cook, the Prime Minister of the country. Now, everyone's asking, why did this happen? Why did this happen? You know, is it just the personal ambition of a number of the people who now find themselves on the front bench? Was it just the petty hatreds that get built up after leadership coup after leadership coup, or was it something deeper? Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I've been talking now for a little while about this deep philosophical division that lies at the heart of the coalition, particularly in the Liberal Party. A key reason was there is a battle for the soul of the Liberal Party underway at the moment, and the centrepiece of that battle is climate and energy policy. And what the deposal of the last Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull involved, Deputy Speaker, was a fight within the coalition to place the hard right agenda on climate and energy policy right at the heart of this government. Right at the heart of this government. Now, the new Prime Minister, the member for Cook, pretends that he had to have his arm twisted to be appointed Prime Minister. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time when someone said, surprise, surprise, member for Cook, you're going to have the job as Prime Minister. No treachery on his part, no numbers being done on his part to try and come through the middle between the member for Dixon and the then member for Wentworth. And we see what he has given to the hard right in response to their support ultimately. He has given us the member for Hume as the Energy Minister, perhaps the key piece of surrender to the hard right. But he has walked away from the National Energy Guarantee. He's walked away from National Energy Guarantee version 3.0, which, count them, was the fifth energy policy this government had in just 3 years. He's walked away from any policy to deliver the commitments to reduce carbon pollution under the Paris Agreement, and walked away from any responsibility to future generations of Australians, our children and our grandchildren, to ensure that they live in a safe climate. But as the member for Wakefield, soon to be the member for Spence, said, the key concession was to hand the energy portfolio to one of their own, to one of the hard right who has been fighting this fight within the Liberal Party since he came to this building. We now have the most ideological person ever to hold the energy portfolio sitting at this table in this debate. And there is no clearer example, Mr Deputy Speaker, of this government focusing on their own divisions, on their own ideological obsessions, instead of on the interests of the Australian people, than the shambles of energy policy debate that's gone on in their party room, because the evidence is clear. What this extraordinary turn of events over recent weeks has shown, and what it will make absolutely sure of, is that the energy crisis that's emerged under this government is going to get far, far worse. Now, sensible members of this government understand that. Even the new Treasurer, who profited coincidentally out of this coup against the member for Wentworth, even he recognised this on the Insiders program on Sunday. He said no one was more disappointed than him at the death of the National Energy Guarantee. No one more disappointed than him. Again, it's all about them. It's all about poor old new Treasurer, all his disappointment. Nothing about the thousands of businesses that have been waiting for an energy policy finally to be settled by this government after seeing their power prices skyrocket over the last 5 years under this government, and the viability of their businesses placed in jeopardy while this coalition party room undertakes its parlour games over whether climate change is real or is not real. No thought to the millions of households who are seeing their household bills skyrocket under a government that is completely incapable of settling an energy policy. It was all about them. But at his heart, the new Treasurer knows that this is a disaster for the country, and I suspect a disaster for the government, because he and the new Prime Minister, when the new Prime Minister was the Treasurer, have been promising households and businesses for weeks and months now that the National Energy Guarantee was the best chance of bringing this energy crisis to an end. Only last month, the now Prime Minister told Lee Sales on the 7:30 report that he had never come across an initiative in his 10 years in parliament that had broader support than the National Energy Guarantee, except for 5 or 6 people on the other side of parliament who vetoed it. Every business group in this nation supported the National Energy Group. Every single business group in this nation supported it. And even the new minister issued a media release on the National Energy Guarantee, a media release entitled "Energy Guarantee Delivers Affordable, Reliable Electricity." But I've looked at the minister's website, and the current version of that media release says, "Page not found." Page not found. We're sorry, but the page you're looking for can't be found, erased from history. The name of an energy policy that dare not speak its name again, because we actually know about the member for Hume. He never supported it. He never supported the National Energy Guarantee. This man is the member for Warringah's candidate for Energy Minister. Alan Jones has made absolutely clear how delighted he is about this appointment. It's one of the best appointments in politics in years, he said, because the member for Hume doesn't accept the science of climate change. He said in this building, in this chamber, he described climate change science as the new climate religion that has little basis on fact and everything to do with blind faith. He's a man who made his name campaigning against renewable energy, was the headline act in a ridiculous rally out the front, also co-headlined by Alan Jones, called the Wind Farm Fraud Rally, where he said, large-scale wind, it's very clear, it's not economic on any grounds. Now, I might want to talk to the Energy Council or any other energy expert in the country now who have seen these strike prices on wind and solar energy come in way, way lower, even with firming up technology, way, way lower than any other technology that those opposite continue to talk about. We do know what we're going to get from this Energy Minister now. We're going to get no cuts in pollution, a complete abdication of any responsibility to undertake discharge our responsibility to future generations around climate change. We're going to see a smashing of jobs and investment. His mentor, the member for Warringah, did exactly that a few years ago. 88% collapse in investment, thousands of jobs lost, pursuing the sort of policy the hard right and the coalition party room wants. But the surest thing we will see is that prices will rise. The government's own modelling made this clear. They promised a $550 cut to power bills, but the same modelling warned that prices would go up by $300 if the National Energy Guarantee was not delivered. Tony Wood has said as much in the Financial Review this morning. What we also see in the Financial Review on the front page is that future prices, the price that markets are betting on in the future, have already started to rise because of the policy uncertainty involved in this government. Now, the Prime Minister recognised in a previous life, when he was Treasurer only a few weeks ago, that policy uncertainty is the key driver of price rises in this country. He said again on that 7:30 report interview a few weeks ago, if you're not for the National Energy Guarantee, then you're for continued uncertainty, which leads to higher prices. Perhaps the standout sentence from this minister's first speech was that he wouldn't, quote, even try to deliver policy certainty, investor certainty in the delivery of an essential service in a mixed economy that their party is largely responsible for privatising over the last quarter of a century. A complete abdication of government responsibility. This government is an absolute shambles on energy policy. It has cost another Prime Minister his job, but the most important thing is it's going to cost households and businesses much, much more on their power bills.